All right, before cutting any wood, I'm going to do some cutouts on cardboard of a few different sizes that I think might work for the Lagun tabletop. First one I'm going to try is the 26 by 16. So yeah, just a nice piece of cardboard and box cutter. And we have our test tabletop, number 1. All right, so we got our 26 by 16 cardboard cutout. And we're gonna go ahead and see how that works with the table dynamics. One of the first things I realize is that corner is gonna hit. Have this, yeah, definitely have this centered. So we could trim the corners off here, which is probably a good idea anyway. And that would allow it to clear. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. Okay. All right, some other things to consider are, what do you like to do on this table? So for one, we like to play some board games. So I brought a couple of our favorites to just try out, get a feel for. I definitely think Scrabble is going to work out for 4 people, so no issues with that game. Another family favorite, although often contentious, in Monopoly. So Monopoly's not going to fit on there width-wise, but probably stable enough. I mean, there's this one fold in the board here, or cutout. So I think that's going to be just fine. And you can even rotate the board around if you need to. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. All right, when testing this out, you want to make sure that you've got this thing centered on the Lagun table base. So find the center in your cardboard, find a bolt. This extra 7/16 bolt I had work. Cut a hole and then use that bolt down into the center of the Lagun table, and that'll make sure that you're registered on that, since this is a important decision or measurement we're making here. So as I found earlier, the corners, if they're not rounded or cut off, they're going to bump into the side here with this 26 by 16. So I tried a couple different cuts on the corners. I started with 1 inch, and that didn't quite make it. So now I'm at 1.5 inches, and I think that's going to work. So that will clear the side of the van. Even double check it, because I cut 2 corners here to test. If we keep going, yep, that corner will clear. So I think that's what we're going to shoot for, 26 by 16, 1.5 inches cut off each corner. And we could try 1.25 inches, see if that does it. It's going to be pretty tight though. Pretty sure 1.5 inches is the way to go. All right, so I'm getting ready to cut this piece of plywood bamboo for the Lagun tabletop. I looked at several different brands of bamboo plywood. Cali bamboo, plyboo were a couple of the more prevalent ones. But the only one that had a distributor in my area was plyboo. So I picked up this 3/4 inch amber edge grained bamboo plywood from the local distributor here. It wasn't cheap, but it looks really nice. So I'm excited about how this is going to look. All right, before we start cutting this is an expensive piece of bamboo plywood, so we want to maximize every bit of this. So before I just take this template and start tracing it and cutting it, I had to think ahead about the other things I'm going to be using this for. So in my case, I'm planning to use one full length of this to get 3 cabinet doors cut in the future, because this is 96 by 48. So we'll do 60, about 90 by 14. We'll cover 3 cabinet doors. Then we're going to cut this tabletop here. That'll be the 26 by 16. Then we'll do another cabinet door here, because we'll have 14. Yeah, because we'll have 34 left going this way. 34 by about 60. Or no, more than that, 34 by 80, because we're only cutting 16 out of this. So I'll have 34 here and about 80 left over. So I'll be able to get that 4th cabinet door, and then I'll still have like over 60 inches by 34 left for the galley countertop, and hopefully the front door. I think I'll be able to get them both out of there, so I'm stoked about that. Okay, so now we're gonna get ready to cut this. Keep in mind that, when you're cutting with if you don't have a table saw, you have a circular saw, you're going to want to find a method to cut as straight as possible. I'm going to use this large T-square here to go ahead and trace out. I measured 16 inches over. Actually, I measured a little over 16 inches, because that's where I want my pencil mark, so that when the saw cuts that out, the saw blade's about a 1/16 thick, it'll cut away that pencil line and leave me with exactly 16 inches. All right, if you want to cut really straight lines and you don't have a table saw, the way to do it is just take something that's really straight, like I'm using this level here, and line it up and clamp it down to the side of the pencil line that you want to cut. And the spacing, well, it depends on your circular saw. In my case, the spacing was about 1 5/8. And if I space it out like that all the way down here and I lock this down, now I can run my saw and it'll guide along this edge and make a perfectly straight cut. All right, cutting this way, a similar approach. I'm going to clamp down this level to use as a guide for the saw. But since I can't get another clamp over here, just due to the length of this, another way to do it is just put something else here, since I'm going to be pushing up against this as a guide as I saw this way. So as long as I've got this clamped, this can't go anywhere and it'll serve as a guide. Other thing, I'm putting down just another thin sheet of wood here for the saw to ride on, because I noticed when I went the other direction, as the saw went, the part that wasn't cutting kind of left a scrape mark on the bamboo, which, you know, that'll just be the bottom of the table, but I don't want that to happen over here, so I'm going to be a little more careful. So one thing I noticed right away with this bamboo is when you're cutting in the direction of the grain, it cuts nice and clean. When you're cutting against the grain, it like frays up a little bit, so I'll have to do some sanding there. All right, so we got the 26 by 16 cut out. Just wanted to show you, this is the fraying that happens when you're cutting against the grain. Also, I don't know if you can see it, but got to be careful. This scribes really easy, so if your saw has anything that could scribe on it, you want to put down something protective. The good news is the bottom side, where opposite of the frame, even though it was against the grain, that side's clean. And everything I cut with the grain is clean. So we'll do a little bit of sanding, and then we'll get the corners cut off. All right, next thing we're going to be doing here is cutting the corners. Now earlier I figured out that they need to be 1.5 inches, 45 degree. So the quickest way to do that is go ahead and measure 1.5 inches, make a mark, do that both ways, and then take your speed square and just go ahead and line that up on the corner, and this will be a 45 degrees. So just find your mark and then trace it. All right, so before deciding what kind of stain or finish I want, the best thing to do is do some samples. So this area here that I'm not going to be using, I went ahead and did a cherry wood stain here and a natural wood stain here, and then a natural wood's like right along the edge, and then no stain here. And then I also went over these with spar urethane water-based, so I can see how that affects the color. And overall, I think I really just like the, the color of the wood with the spar urethane. The natural stain kind of made it a little more brown or yellowish, and the cherry stain, it just came out a little too brown. I don't really want more brown in the van. I think it's going to look too dark. So I think the natural colors of this amber bamboo, it has, you know, a little bit of brown, even a little bit of amber in it will tie in just fine with the shadow hickory flooring. So that's what I'm going to go with. Just spar urethane on the unstained bamboo. All right, our tabletop is cut and ready. I'm going to be applying a water-based spar urethane to the tabletop just to help seal it, protect it, and I chose spar urethane because it doesn't yellow with time, which, you know, the van being outside exposed to UV light is a real concern. Also, the spar urethane is clear, so it's not going to add like any kind of darkening or yellowing to this like polyurethanes can. And so I really like that about spar urethane. And then I decided to go with water-based because I hate the off-gassing from the urethanes, and I've used both oil and water-based before, and they're pretty comparable now. So I'm pretty confident the water-based will be just fine. Now first, before we apply that spar urethane finish, I'm going to sand this down lightly just to kind of roughen up the texture a little bit. I'm going to be using a fine grit sandpaper to do that. You want to do it in the direction of the wood grain. All right, now when you apply any urethane, you don't want to be in a cold environment. So I've come indoors now into the basement where it's, you know, 60 degrees or so. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and start applying the spar urethane. And again, you want to apply it in the direction of the wood grain. I'm going to get a good high quality brush too. Don't skimp on the brush. This is a nice nylon brush. So another great thing about water-based is without all those odors, you can apply it indoors. All right, this is after one coat. It's still drying, but water-based dries in an hour, which is also a huge plus. But so far, it's looking really nice. Love the colors. All right, the first coat has dried. It's been an hour. So we're going to take a fine sandpaper. This is a 320 grit sandpaper. If you feel this, it's not as smooth as it was before the first coat. So we just want to smooth that out lightly, not pushing too hard. Again, following the grain. All right, so you can see there's a white dust. So now we're just going to wipe that off. And it is smooth again. There's no more roughness. And when applying this, you want to start from the middle and work your way out to the edge. So that first coat I did, that just kind of sealed things. So now these subsequent coats are going to really build up this finish nice. All right, so we got our bamboo tabletop finished. It's looking really nice. The next step's going to be attaching this Lagun base, table base plate to the tabletop. So the way to do that, first thing, we want to locate where this needs to be on the table, dead center. So the dimensions on this plate that I measured out, it's 7 7/8 width, and it's 11 3/4 length. So when you subtract that off the 16 and the 26 and divide by 2, we get 4 1/16 in from each side, and we get 7 1/8 in from these sides. So we can just check that out by taking some measurements, make sure that everything's lining up. Five eighths, yep. All right, so everything's looking good. This is nice and centered. Now this takes 6 screws, so the instructions say number 8 screws. I believe it can actually fit number 10 screws, but I'm just going to go ahead and use number 8 because that's what the instructions said to use. I'm using, in my case, this bamboo is exactly 3/4 thickness. That's different than normal 3/4 plywood, which is actually a little bit short of 3/4. The bamboo is not. It is exactly 3/4 or very, very close to 3/4. So, you know, in trying to figure out what size screw to use, the general rule of thumb is you want to pick a wood screw that will go at least 2/3 of the into the material you're trying to secure something to. So in this case, since this is 3/4, we want to go 1/2 inch in. And I initially tried using a 3/4 inch screw, but this plate is 1/8 of an inch, so that had it going about 5/8 into the wood here, and it was a little too close for comfort. I did do some tests, and it looked like it worked out okay on a test piece of bamboo, but I think it's kind of overkill, so I'm actually going to go with a number 8 5/8 length screw to secure this on. All right, it's done. Everything is attached. Flip side looks good. Nothing's penetrated through. Again, that's why I went with the 5/8. The 3/4 inch screw, it got right, you know, when going through, it got right up to the edge here of the 3-ply construction. And I didn't want to risk any of the splitting. And, you know, I spent a lot of time on this. I didn't want it to get screwed up. But yeah, it looks great. And so yeah, we're gonna go check out how it looks in the van. All right, that concludes this video on how to make a bamboo tabletop for a Lagun table base. Really stoked about how this came out. It looks beautiful, and it fits in here perfectly. So let me show you how it functions. And if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and most importantly, have fun out there.